Hello friends, welcome back to Fastcuts. We know a large number of movies released on natural disasters. Of all these natural disasters, volcano-related movies are the least explored. Hence, we are introducing a movie that is based on the theme volcano disaster titled Dante's Peak, released in 1997, which was premiered on Netflix recently.
Hi friends, we know that a large number of disaster movies have come out on various subjects. Many of these movies were focused on floods, tsunamis, typhoons, pandemics, etc. Volcano disaster-related films were the least explored of these. Though there are volcano disasters like THAMBORA and Mount ETNA, which resulted in the deaths of lakhs of people, only the movie Volcano will come to our mind if somebody asks. Hence, we are introducing the volcano disaster movie Dante's Peak, released in 1997 and premiered on Netflix recently. Pierce Brosnan, who is famous for his role as James Bond, and the heroine of the world-famous movie Terminator, Linda Hamilton, are in the lead roles in this movie. The movie is directed by Roger Donaldson. At the time when the movie was released, it turned out to be a flop. However, this film has since gained a large number of fans. The movie starts with a scene of certain people running through the dust and smoke in a small town. Large fireballs are coming down, and all places are engulfed in fire. The heavy downpour with ashes comes down to the earth as mud rain. One person is trying to desperately escape through the smoke and fire with his truck. The roads were not properly visible to him due to ash and rain. His name is Harry. He is a volcanologist. He reaches a temporary research camp, uttering to Marianne that they have to escape the place quickly. Marianne is his lover. On hearing this, Marianne asked Harry what he was saying, and after showing him some results, she told him that we have a lot to study based on these results. When Harry repeated the need to escape from the place, Marianne realized that he was serious and that something was wrong and got into the vehicle with Harry. They were desperately trying to escape through the ashes and rain. Fireballs were also falling in between, and one such fireball fell on the front of their vehicle and damaged it. Suddenly, one big stone fell inside the vehicle and it hit directly the head of Marianne. She succumbed to her last breath in the hands of Harry, and he was crying loudly. 4 years have gone by since Harry got a phone call while working out in his room. It was his boss, Paul. Since he had not attended it, the call went to voicemail, and Paul was telling him that some unusual movements are observed in certain places and to get ready soon to do some research work there, and asked him to reach there soon. Harry is working for the U.S. Geological Survey, and he reached there immediately. Some of his friends were working on a robot and asked Harry why he was there on vacation. He told them that he came because his boss Paul asked him to come, and he met Paul. Harry asked Paul about the problems, and Paul told him that he had observed some unusual movements in Dante's Peak, although both of them saw very little chance of a volcanic eruption there. Harry reached a motel in a small town under the Dante's Peak volcano. He asked the person in that motel about the mayor of that place and told him that he wanted to meet her. He was informed that the mayor would reach the nearby place shortly, as there is an award function in connection with the selection of Dante's Peak as the second best place to live in America. Rachel is the name of the mayor, and she has been helped by her daughter Lauren on the speech to be presented at the function. The people were waiting for the mayor, and she arrived suddenly. After receiving the award, the mayor started her speech, in which she reiterated how beautiful and good the town is for living and thanked everyone for their support. He also thanked Elliot Blair, who came forward to make a large investment in this town. A hot spring is a place in the forest where small water pools exist. Due to the heat coming from under the earth, the water in these pools is hot. A couple came to bathe in the pools, and as soon as they started bathing, the water in the pool started boiling. Harry met Rachel after the function and introduced himself. Rachel told him that his boss had called up and they could talk at her residence, and they started towards her home. On the way to her home, they stopped their vehicle in front of an old mine, and Rachel shouted at Graham to come out. Graham and his friends came out and got into the vehicle. Graham was playing with a quartz crystal on the way home, and he asked Rachel whether she could take them to Granny's house, where Lauren also supported him. Rachel told them that Harry had a lot of work to be done, and hence no time. But Harry told Rachel that he had no problem dropping the children off at Granny's house, and they reached there, which was situated near a large lake. Granny's name is Ruth, and Rachel asked her to look after the children for a while, as Harry and Rachel had to go to the pond on top of the hill. Ruth suggested that everyone go there and take a bath in the hot water, and everyone went. Harry took some water from the lake in his hands, and he noticed something was wrong, and Rachel asked him what happened. He said nothing seriously was observed, and he asked when the trees nearby started dying, but Rachel had no idea. On the way back, they stopped the vehicle near the hot water pond for the children to take a bath. Lauren came back screaming after seeing a few dead squirrels near the pond. Graham was saying that there was a bad smell everywhere and started jumping into the pond but was stopped by Harry. Suddenly, they had seen the dead bodies of a couple in the pond and informed the police, who removed them. Rachel convened a meeting of town VIPs at Harry's request. In the meeting, they informed us that the volcano has been dormant for a long time, but is now showing signs of getting active, and hence people have to be careful, and in the event of an emergency, ready to evacuate to safer places. People started arguing about losing business opportunities and their lives. Meanwhile, Paul and his team arrived at the motel and were directed to the meeting location. Paul did not like the meeting and informing people about a possible disaster. He was more concerned about losing business opportunities. Paul was referring to one previous instance wherein all warnings were given and precautions were taken, but nothing happened. But all businesses were lost and people were without money and work. Paul was saying that he will be here with his team and study the possibilities of volcano eruptions with his instruments, and when it is essential, warning will be given to people. But Harry had a different opinion and told Paul not to be foolish. Harry desperately left the place while the water in the pond started boiling, and Harry reached the motel with plans to leave. He met Paul there in the bar, and Paul told him that the effort and lives of a lot of people are behind this. Paul was assured of Harry's assistance and support. The next day, Harry reached the coffee shop where Rachel worked, and while he was having coffee, Rachel invited Harry for dinner as a gesture of thanks for saving Graham's life at the pond. Harry accepted the invitation. Harry and another person went on to examine the volcano in a helicopter, but they could not find anything unusual there. In the evening, Harry arrived at Rachel's house and became good friends with the children. After dinner, Rachel and Harry were talking, and Rachel told him that she couldn't even think of living in a different place as she was born and brought up in this place. She was also married at this place to Brian, but he had been missing for 6 years. It was a shock to all of them, but they slowly recovered. Rachel asked him whether Harry is not yet married, and he said no, as he is always wandering and never sticks to a single place. He told her that he was about to marry Mary Ann, but she lost her life in a volcano explosion in Colombia 4 years ago. He also told her that once the volcano explodes, the effect will reach us in a minute. She was a little frightened on hearing this and told Harry that he was her strength in such a situation. The next day, Rachel was on the way with coffee for Harry and his friends, and she was excited to meet Harry. They sipped the coffee, and it had an excellent taste. Later on, Harry and 2 of his friends were planting seismographs on top of this hill, and Harry's friends were making fun of him for saying about Rachel. They have returned after completing the work. One day, when Rachel reached Harry's place, they were repairing a robot. Rachel inquired about the robot, and Harry explained that it will do our work where they cannot. Paul was also watching the repair and shouted at Terry to see if he could repair it in time. Terry suddenly got it working by removing ELF from it. He said it was not working because of the weight of ELF, and now it will. To gather information, Harry and Terry reached the top of the hill with the robot, and to gather information, they sent the robot down the hill. But halfway, the robot stopped working, and hence, Terry also went near the robot to repair it. But he could not repair the robot. He had unfastened the tied rope to go to the other side of the hill, but suddenly a small earthquake occurred, and rocks fell on Terry and the robot. Harry jumped to save the life of Terry. Harry removed the rocks one by one and took out Harry from the debris. His leg was broken, and he had been taken to the hospital in a helicopter. Harry returned and got angry with Paul, saying he had not realized what was going to happen. and that he shouldn't play with the lives of people, but Paul was saying that it was a small tremor and need not frighten people by saying this. Harry arrived at the hospital where Terry was being treated and informed him that the situation was deteriorating and asked him to persuade Paul of the gravity of the situation. Nothing happened at Dante's Peak for a few weeks. Paul asked Harry and others to pack up and told them that we were leaving this place tomorrow. They all gathered in a bar the previous evening. Harry was also there, and to say goodbye to her, he approached her and accompanied her home. Rachel offered Harry coffee, but he said no and embraced Rachel. When Rachel opened the tap to get water for Lauren, she saw muddy water coming from the tap. Harry realized the seriousness of the danger approaching and asked her where the pump house was. When they reached there, they got a severe smell of sulfur. Harry reached out to Paul and showed him the water coming out of the tap. Paul also realized the nearing danger and asked Rachel to make arrangements for a town meeting. He also made arrangements for the service of military force. Harry and Rachel reached the school where the public meeting was called. Harry started talking to the people in the meeting. Suddenly, the place started shivering. When they looked out, they saw Dante's Peak exploding. People are frightened and running away. Rachel and Harry went in a vehicle to pick up the children. On the way, he informs Paul about the happenings. People are running with their lives, taking whatever they have got in hand. The tremors were repeatedly happening, and bridges, buildings, and houses were collapsing. Somehow, Rachel and Harry reached their house and realized that the children had taken the truck and were on their way to take Ruth. The roads were full of blocks, and hence Harry took the vehicle through a river where it got stuck in mud. Another vehicle hit the back of Harry's vehicle, and somehow he managed to take it out. At the same time, Graham was driving the vehicle through the ashes without knowing the directions. The millionaire Elliot, who came to invest, was also trapped in Dante's Peak. He had given a good amount to the pilot of the helicopter hired by Paul and tried to escape, but ashes came to the engine of the helicopter and it fell down in front of Rachel and Harry. Harry informed his friends that they were going up to take the children and asked them to arrange a fire force where the helicopter fell. In the meantime, children reached the house of Ruth. With great difficulty, Harry and Rachel reached the house of Ruth. Since all routes to escape had been blocked with wood and rocks, Harry asked Paul to send a helicopter, but asked him to wait, and Harry could not hear what he said. Suddenly, lava came into their house, and they took the boat to escape and entered the lake. They had seen the house of Ruth engulfed in fire. Suddenly, they noticed that all the fish in the lake were dead and floating. Harry realized the volcanic eruption had made the water acidic through the dissolution of sulfur, nitrogen, etc. Harry told everybody to lift their legs because acid was starting to sneak into the boat. Slowly, the boat, made of metal, started dissolving in acid and the engine stopped in the middle of the lake. All the efforts of Harry went in vain. Ruth could not see the children falling into the acid, so she dove into it, pulled the boat to shore, and saved everyone's lives. Ruth was seriously burned. The next day, in the morning, the military forces reached Dante's Peak and shifted other people there. Harry and others were coming down holding Ruth. She was seriously burned and could not survive. Due to the heat waves of lava, the snow in the mountains started melting and coming down as mud heavily. Paul and his team, along with the military, saved all the people and started to escape from the place. Paul called up Harry and asked him to escape soon, as the bridge would get washed away soon. He was not sure whether Harry would hear him. Harry and his team, coming down the mountain, have got a vehicle and reached town. Water is coming down heavily, breaking the dam also. Somehow, the military vehicles crossed the bridge, but Paul could not cross the bridge. Paul and his vehicle had been washed away with the bridge in the flooding, and they could just see that. Harry was trying to escape, but he was stopped by flowing lava. He managed to drive through and somehow reach town. Rachel's house was also destroyed, and they reached the place where Harry was staying. Harry realized from the computer that the volcano would erupt again, and suddenly started the vehicle and moved forward. Suddenly the volcano exploded in full force and fireballs started falling everywhere. The town was also shattered by the power of the explosion. Harry could not find any way to escape, so he drove the car into the old mine. Soon after they came out of the car in the mine, a big rock fell on the car. It has gone flat. Graham was familiar with the place, and they reached the place where they had set out earlier. Some light and something to eat were there. Suddenly, rocks started falling and got into the vehicle, though he was injured. But the car also got damaged as rocks fell on it. Somehow, Harry put on the ELF. Terry and friends were in the lab and got a signal from the ELF and realized Harry and his team were still alive. The fire force saved the lives of Harry, Rachel, and the children with tremendous effort. They walked into new life through the crowd standing there. In a short note, the movie Dante's Peak holds up with the disaster movies made recently. The climax is also worth the wait and has slowly gained popularity among the viewers. Dante's Peak matches the definition of underrated. It is very dramatic, suspenseful, and thought-provoking. It's just a cinematic masterpiece. And if you like our video, don't forget to show your support by hitting the like button. Also, do share and subscribe. Your support is always our motivation. Thank you. Till we meet again for the next video.